Hi, I'm Benjamin Nicoll. I'm a senior lecturer in communication at Queensland University of Technology. And today I want to talk to you about my article, Latent Freedom in Video Games, which is being published by Theory, Culture and Society. So my article is about player freedom in video games, which is an idea that almost nobody in game studies would take very seriously, I think partly because it just seems empirically false in that all games, even the most ostensibly open world games, are designed to limit player agency in some way. But the other reason people don't tend to take player freedom very seriously as an idea is that it just seems too closely tied to the ideology of free will or the liberal conception of free will to be of any real critical or philosophical value. So why then did I write an article that defends the idea of player freedom? Firstly, because I don't think that we should just reduce the idea of player freedom to the ideology of free will. So I think it's worth distinguishing between actual player freedom and the ideology of free will. And my argument is that actual player freedom isn't the kind of freedom that's just about doing whatever you feel or want. Instead, it's a freedom that's linked to an unconscious drive to fail in gameplay, or what Sigmund Freud might call the death drive. So when players satisfy this drive to fail, they experience a surplus of what Jacques Lacan calls enjoyment. And this enjoyment isn't just what makes games psychically satisfying to play, although I do claim that in the article. So I think that the psychical satisfaction of playing video games comes from the enjoyment of failure and not the attainment of pleasure. But more to the point, this enjoyment is also the true index of player freedom. And the reason for that, I think, is that the enjoyment that we get from failure points to a kernel of subjectivity that exceeds the egoistic and social imperative to just always be following our self-interest. So it frees us from that imperative. So the kind of enjoyment we experience when we play video games reveals that our satisfaction doesn't lie where we think it lies. It doesn't just lie in the attainment of pleasure and mastery. Instead, it lies in this unconscious act of self-negation, which, as I argue, frees us from that imperative to pursue our self-interest. So most video games mystify our enjoyment. They mystify the enjoyment we get from failure by encouraging us to identify instead with fantasies of pleasure and mastery. But there are some games that buck the trend. And one such game that I analyze in the article is Killer 7. So this is a game that exposes players to their own enjoyment, the enjoyment they get from failing. And in so doing, it's a game that reveals that there's a certain freedom to be found in that enjoyment. And this is a freedom that I argue is latent in all forms of gameplay. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you get something out of the article.